Hello, and welcome to the Writers and Illustrators of the Future podcast. This is John Goodwin, your host. Today's guest is Writers of the Future winner, Christopher Baker. Welcome, Christopher.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So first of all, congratulations on being a winner.
Thank you. It's very exciting.
Yeah. So tell me about how you found out about the contest.
So, it's a funny story. I had Googled, fantasy and sci-fi journals, competitions, things like that. And it was quite high up on, the Google search. So I did some research. And then I was talking to a friend about it, one of my old drama teachers, and he said, the Writers of the Future competition, no way. And he actually had an anthology from when he was a child. He's like 37 or something now. But he showed me the old anthology that he had. And I read a few of the stories. I can't remember what they were, but
Sure.
I read a few of the stories. I was like, oh no, this is a legitimate thing. This is really cool. So I entered when I was 17, that was. And that was back at a time when I was entering lots of competitions for my writing because, I was quite a driven 16 and 17-year-old. I was like, I really want to be a writer. I really want to be published. Not much has changed. So I was entering lots of competitions and getting lots of rejections, which is sort of, the standard thing that every writer goes through. At least that's what I tell myself.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. And I was just getting lots of rejections. So I sent my story off to Writers of the Future. And I just, sorry to say, I never sort of looked at my emails. I just assumed that I'd, not got anything and was rejected. But then, so then a few years go by, and I think it was when I was at university, so sort of 21, I get an email from Joni. It's like many years have passed. And she goes, you entered back in 2012 or something like that, and you got an honorable mention. What happened?
You didn't even know.
Yeah, what happened? She said, we've got the certificate here and we never sent it out to you because you never got back to us. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I thought that I'd been rejected because I've been rejected in so many other competitions. But then she said, would you like us to send it to you? I said yes. So then I got my honorable mention. I put it in a frame on my wall. And then I re-entered again when I was at university, and that was the winning story, which is why I'm here. So yeah.
Well, that's amazing.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, congratulations then. That's amazing. You didn't even know for all those years.
No. It was a very nice email to get.
Yeah.
Because at the beginning I thought, it must be spam or something like that. Like I've won something out of the blue, but it turned out it was, I'm in LA now. So
obviously, well, that's great.
Yeah.
So, so evidently you've always wanted to be a writer, or is that something that all of a sudden you woke up one morning when you were 16, or
no? I've always written. When I was very young, I remember this quite clearly because it's quite embarrassing. I wrote a short story anthology called The Dog Tales. So even back then I was a master of the pun. And it was, a collection of stories about dogs saving the world, superhero dogs. So, who knows, maybe I'll update that and publish it now that I'm 22.
Well, Stephen King definitely had that when he did his stories when he was in college.
Yeah.
When he came back and
he ran a paper or something like that, didn't he? I think he made his own little paper when he was young.
Yeah. So, any particular major influences for you that have inspired you?
Lots of writers inspire me. A writer who kind of changed the way that I view writing is Ursula Le Guin, who passed away recently. It's quite sad, but she's fantastic. I read the Earthsea Chronicles. It's quite interesting because she was writing about wizard schools before, the most famous wizard school. But the way she kind of uses the extraordinary in her work, the fact that it's always rooted in emotion, kind of gives it a lot of weight, because I think a lot of fantasy tends to include magic, just for the sake of, it being magic, and
Right.
people like magic.
Exactly.
But I think in her work there's always a lyricism, there's always a weight, there's always an emotion attached to everything. There's always a reason behind that. So I think she's probably had the biggest influence on me. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So we'll use this to bridge over. So tell me about your story.
So my story, it's called An Itch, and it, like I was just talking about, it has that element of magic to it, which is rooted in the emotion, which kind of stems out of this collapse of a family, and two sisters dealing with the fallout of that collapse. So it's a story about forgiveness, whether that's possible in the face of immense trauma, and also it's a story about using the extraordinary to maybe escape, and if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. I mean, it was a great story. Obviously, you won.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yes.
It's good to hear. I need to hear more of that, I think.
So, so between when you entered, gave up, and then got the phone call saying, "Hey, so was that like, had you decided you just want to go to school and pursue some other career, or what? Worked?
I was always quite driven towards being a writer. I've done lots of other things. I tried to do acting for a while. I did improv a lot, actually, which I think is still quite helpful in my writing, because improvisation is all about accepting, being positive, not giving up. Because I think a lot of writers struggle with the idea of failure. But like I've just said, I've failed many, many times, and I think everyone who's successful fails many, many times, because you don't learn unless you fail. I mean, that's probably been the thing which is most stuck with me from my other pursuits, improvisation, saying yes, not being afraid of failure. So I was always pushing towards being an author. So I went to university and studied English and creative writing. I met quite a lot of great authors, great teachers through that, and they sort of helped me develop my writing process. Again, they tell you at university writing courses that you're going to fail again and again, and it's not a glamorous romantic endeavor. Most people's kind of perception of writers is that there's this moment of inspiration that we just sit around with a whiskey or whatever, and we'll have an idea strike us, and then we'll bang out 5,000 words or whatever. But at least for me, that's not that's not what happens. It's sitting at a computer at 7 a.m. in the morning, and often staring at a blank screen, maybe writing 500 words a day, and that's okay, I think. Yeah.
Good. So, what are you looking forward to the most this week out here in Los Angeles?
I think talking to all of these amazing writers that are gonna run the workshops, Orson Scott Card, Tim Powers, like all of these, David Farland. On my way to Paradise, I remember I read that. He wrote that under Dave Wolverton, but I read that quite a while back. But I remember just like the images that he creates in that story are so striking. I'm just I'm going to try not to fanboy. I'm going to try to be very professional and writerly and say clever things to them. But that's probably the thing that I'm most excited for. Yeah.
Well, that's great. So what do you see in your future now for you as a writer?
Yeah. So this is my first story that's actually been physically published. But in the future, I'd like to have a novel published. I really want to be a novelist. I've actually got something which is in its final steps. So I think, the next move for me will be plucking up the courage to approach agents and things like that. Because,
Well, that's one of the things you'll be learning about at this workshop.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Very excited.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you also be learning about how to branch into novelizing.
Oh, okay. Brilliant.
Good. All right. So anything else that you'd like to let other aspiring writers know, like about what you went through and points where you wanted to give up, but then you persisted? So, because a lot of people will be listening to this are going to be similar to you a few weeks ago before you found out that you were a winner.
I think my main piece of advice would be, if you enter a competition, check your emails, because you might have been accepted. And yeah, no, but in all seriousness, I think not being afraid to just write the first thing that comes to your head, because at least you'll be writing. At least it's not a blank page. You can always work with something. If it is on the page, you can always make it better. Because I think lots of people fail at the first hurdle because they have this romantic idea of what writing is. But no, it's a grind, but it's a satisfying grind. I think people in this day and age might be too preoccupied with this idea of immediate gratification. You know, you get it on social media, things like that, you know, clickbait. Everyone wants a quick and easy answer. And this idea of sort of humans are built for struggle, to struggle against something because it's satisfying once you reach that goal. It's why people climb mountains. It's why people run marathons. I think it's why people write novels, because it's a satisfying struggle.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Christopher.
Thank you.
And have a great week.
You too.
Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for our next installment of the Writers of the Future podcast. Subscribe to the Writers of the Future podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Writers and Illustrators of the Future are contests created by L. Ron Hubbard to provide a means for the aspiring writer and artist to be seen and acknowledged. It is free to enter and open to new and amateur short story writers and artists of science fiction or fantasy.